My name is Chris Riley. I'm the managing partner of Cutwater Shift, and we are a very specialized merger and acquisition firm where we are looking to revitalize equity only. So we don't just go out and sell businesses. We look at businesses that are somewhere between 45 and 80% of their optimum value. We bring the investment bankers in early, and then we bring that company over the next 18 to 24 months to that optimum value, and then we seamlessly transition that business off, either a merger, an acquisition. Over the next 5 years, we have some economic changes that are coming, and I want to bring some of those to light because they are very difficult when you're a business owner. They're very difficult when you are a high net worth individual. I assume that most of you have clients that fit in some or all of those categories. So what I want to do is go over the entire federal budget in just 5 minutes. This is the actual federal budget. I read it every year, every single page. It's really no fun. But I read it because I'm wondering if they're actually going to get it. If they're actually going to put the pieces together at some point that we're running into this debt crisis that everyone seems to be running forward on. So we're actually not going to go through it. I summarized it quickly for you. So these blue lines are the individual income and expenditures. So your big ticket item obviously is the individual income taxes. Everybody pays income taxes in this room? Yeah? Are you trying to minimize income taxes for your clients? Yes? Is anyone trying to increase income taxes for their clients? Okay, so I have a problem because if we don't increase income taxes, we're never going to get out of this debt hole. So where's the money going to come from? So this is Obama's 10-year budget. So over the next 10 years, we're going to bring in $21 trillion in income taxes. Okay, so then you just go on down the line, Social Security, corporate income taxes, excise taxes, all the way down. Then you start spending. Now you start spending Medicaid, interest on the debt. Interesting. Interest on the debt, an item that cannot change. You can't cut interest on the debt. You can't just refinance with the world. That's coming close to being 25% of our entire budget on the direction of where we're going. So we have to pay attention now to that line item. So as you go through, let's skip this for a moment. Let's just break it down into two categories. On the left side, we run the entire government without entitlement programs. No Social Security, no Medicare, no Medicaid. So don't pay any income taxes, don't pay payroll taxes, don't pay anything into those funds, and then don't pay anything out. And let's just run the country on the budget on this side. That's a $5.6 trillion surplus. Not bad. The whole country without entitlement programs is a $5.6 trillion surplus. When you pull back in the entitlement programs now, over the next 10 years, what's in writing, we're going to have a $10 trillion deficit. So Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security are going to cost more, to the tune of $10 trillion, than what the payroll taxes and other items are paying in. So that is why we're stuck with that $4.5 trillion deficit over the next 10 years. So let's look at where we're at from a debt standpoint. So it's two graphs, and just slice it right here. Here's 2002 to 2008. And those of you that know the formula for the slope of a line know that that's about a 1 slope. Okay, so there you go. You're rising on this debt slope. Starting in 2008, the slope gets a little steeper. Starting in 2008, we pick up the gross domestic product. What happened right there? We shut down. Remember that sequestration, fiscal cliff kind of weirdness? Right there. So we didn't spend any money. We just went flat. But then we opened again. And we just threw it all back. And now that little blue line is why I'm here. That little blue line, that slope that's looking like 3.5, is getting very, very dangerous. So, what's the problem? What's the cause of it? The cause of it is Medicare. Number one, the number one reason we have a serious problem going forward is Medicare. Who wants to tell your parents that they're not going to get Medicare? Nobody. Nobody. Who, in this room, most of your clients probably aren't saying, Julie, make sure that I get my Social Security check and that I have Medicare. Probably not. So that's why there's not a lot of focus on what's happening here. The trustees every May, and it's coming out, I'm very interested to see if this trustee report actually hits it. It's going to tell us again many things. This is David Walker, he's the former Comptroller General of the United States, and he quit in 2008. He just said enough. From 1998 to 2008, he was the CPA. So, you all have CPAs. How many of you are CPAs right now? Okay, so you know there's some responsibility that you have to have. Well, this is the trustee report from last year. Trustees project that hospital insurance, tax income, and other dedicated revenues will fall short of hospital expenditures in most future years under current law. That changed. The 2012 report, all future years. But somebody said, if we keep saying all future years, somebody's going to call us on it. You're telling me that expenditures are going to increase and we're never going to have enough every year to pay it? Well, won't that mean that the trust fund's going to go to zero? Yep, sure will. So they changed it to most. For some reason, we're still waiting on what that reason is, because there's no actuarial expert, including the Medicare actuary, who's ever said this is a sustainable program. In fact, if you take Part A, Medicare, that's the hospital insurance. Go to the hospital, Part A covers that. Part B is the insurance, the supplementary medical insurance, just like our health insurance. Social Security has its own trust fund. Those three trust funds, which by the way don't have any money in them, but that's the way they designed it, but they're calling them trust funds and they're supposed to have money in them. Those three trust funds are underwater to the tune of $39.6 trillion. These aren't my numbers. I'm not creating an analysis. All I'm doing is bringing to the surface what we have coming. So, what does that mean? That means that our $17.5 trillion debt that we're calling it, and that's broken down into the debt to the public, which is about 12, and then your $5 trillion that we owe all of our other departments. But let's skip that for a moment. It's 17. Part A is 4.6 trillion. The medical insurance is 15 trillion. The Part D, which is 6.9, which Bush put in for prescription drugs, and 9.6 for Social Security. So if you are a CPA and you know that liabilities are supposed to be on a balance sheet, that you're supposed to pay them at some point, and you're going to put all those together, you've got yourself a $54 trillion debt, if you will, that you have to somehow reconcile. Is it today? No. But when seniors are retiring at about $10,000 per day, somewhere along the line they're going to say, okay, you need to pay your Social Security and we're going to go to the hospital and you're going to need to pay us. So that's going to reveal itself. The problem with that is the actuarial folks say, yes, these are numbers that might happen, however, people keep living longer now and medical costs are going up and we don't know if we can control that. So here's an alternate plan. CYA, that's the alternate plan. That's what's probably going to happen, is in essence what they're saying. These are the numbers that they're saying over the next 75 years. So today, no one is really caring about 75 years, but they do this 75-year projection because that's really a lifespan. So all the people that are going to be paying in, the 2-year-olds that are going to pay in payroll taxes until they retire, they factored all these items in. That's too much money. There's no plan. There's no way. Here's the issue. 2016, the disability fund is set to go to zero. 2024, Part A, the hospital insurance Medicare fund, is set to go to zero. So there has to be a law change. Because what happens in 2024 is whatever is being paid in can only be paid out. And it's about 74 to 76%. So in 2024, if we did nothing, we would just tell all the seniors in 2024, well, you can get 75%. You can see what a disaster that would be. We can't even solve our problems today with paying 100%. So something has to be done. What's going to be done? And what's happening in the states is this unfunded pension issue. The unfunded pensions are mounting to the point where now the state budgets are having to do something. They're going to have to reconcile because the states do have a balanced budget amendment. The federal government does not. The states do. So all their government workers that are now retiring have the same pension and health benefits. But those liabilities are on the books. But they didn't put them as a liability on the books officially. They put them as a balanced budget when they got their surplus from the federal government to balance their budget, and then they push those liabilities off to the future. So Connecticut has $45,000, $46,000 per taxpayer that they're going to have to reconcile with as they're rolling forward. Similarly, the red brick line on this axis shows the amount of total bills that the state has compared to the available assets to pay them. So if they were a company, the state of Connecticut would have 631% of bills to pay as available assets. A little closer to home, our friends in Illinois. Is anyone from Illinois?
Now or ever?
Now. Anyone with businesses in Illinois? Okay. Here's the issue. They have to come up with that at some point. The people are going to retire. We saw what happened in Detroit. So now the federal trustee has trumped the state constitution of Michigan, saying, well, you can't mess with retirement funds. You can't do that. Well, the federal bankruptcy trustee says, actually, yes, we can, and we are. So there's your first precedent of what's going to happen. Everybody to the left of Michigan has a bigger problem that they're going to have to deal with. So why do we care about it? Why this is great information for you, and maybe half of you already know all this information. Why do I care about it, and why should you care about it? Because when we're looking at businesses that sell in multiple states, and businesses that have payroll taxes, and businesses that are going to be the #1 solution for how we're going to pay this off. We don't want to go after the seniors. We don't want to go after the individuals. The middle class is void. So either we're going to tax the wealthy or we're going to tax the businesses. If we go back to that income, the corporate income taxes is here. The individual income taxes are here. The folks in Washington, and we get our data from basically Washington and some of the states, the tax reform plans are drying. The ink is drying. It's going to affect businesses significantly, especially in these states. So if you have a business that you're selling in these states, there are going to be changes. Why are there going to be changes? Well, Atlas Van Lines and United Van Lines create a migration report every year, and they calculate the cost of who's leaving the state as opposed to who's coming back in the state. And then they give us a number. This one is a little difficult because it's crazy, but the yellow are the ones that are primarily leaving, the blue are the ones that are primarily going to that state, and the red are in the middle. Well, Atlas Van Lines has a little easier one. So let's look at the yellow states. Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, Kentucky, Michigan. They're fleeing the state. Economic impact studies. What happens when people flee the state? Corporations have a much more difficult time recruiting people to go into those states when they're fleeing the state, so they start looking at headquarter areas. Well, if you have a merger, if you have an acquisition, those decisions are factored in as to what plants you're going to keep, where your headquarters are going to be, and what are the economics going forward. So let's look at it again. Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, Kentucky, they're fleeing the state. All right? Those states sound familiar? Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey, Michigan, Kentucky, New York. It's a bad situation. They're losing their tax base, and they have the highest liabilities. So, I'm not here to say the sky is falling. Does anyone know the the budget that it costs to run the University of Missouri in Columbia on an annual basis. One of your clients is going to fund the University of Missouri. Why? Because on my radio show, I shut it down. Because that was the only thing that I could do to balance the budget in Missouri. I couldn't get rid of the Department of Corrections. Nobody wanted me to do that. I couldn't get rid of the Department of Child and Family Services. No one would allow me to do that. So there's only one big area, $335 million a year, the University of Missouri, gone. There's 44 other fine institutions. Who's a Mizzou alum here? Okay. If you didn't go to Mizzou, would you have just not gone to college? You'd have gone somewhere. Okay, that's my plan. Is there a 0% chance that's going to get implemented? Yes, it's zero. It's not going to happen. But they have to do something. But I was trying to pay all of those people of the $7 billion that are going to be asking for their retirement checks and their health benefits over the next 25 years. And I just asked everyone, who's got a better plan? We have to pay these people. The unions have not brought themselves to the point where they are wanting to negotiate with these numbers. Back to this. Remember this? Remember this? Gross domestic product. Remember this debt? That's our official debt. That's what we have to show. Remember when we pulled back and we saw that 54 trillion? That's what it really looks like. So, how long is it going to be? Maybe 10 years before the seniors are really revealing what it's going to cost for medical? I mean, I don't know. Are we spending more? The Affordable Care Act was intended to reduce this problem. There's a $10 trillion deficit in writing over the next 10 years. The doctors are not all that happy about it. They're the ones that are being targeted. When the sequestration happened, the doctors were the ones that had their fees reduced because they just couldn't do it to anybody else. So, how does it threaten your clients with businesses? What's happening with your competitors? Are your competitors merging? Office Space, for instance. Office Depot and Office Max, they're rolling along, doing great. Fell asleep at the wheel. Staples just dominated the storefront. Just took them over, almost like a tidal wave. Online, Amazon.com just took over the online. So Office Depot and Office Max are sitting there at 3 and 4 going, oh, wait a minute, what just happened here? Well, we better merge. We're both spending too much money on fixed costs and administrative costs, so we better pool that together. And let's look at the redundancies and let's try and figure that out. I don't know if anyone has Office Depot as their client in this room, but who was 5th? Who was 6th? Who was 10th? When all of that happens, when all of those mergers are starting to happen, when things are changing, you better get ahead of it, because when it's time to sell your business, if you've been losing altitude and the rest of the industry has been merging, it's a very, very difficult conversation to have. When the investment bankers have already taken the business, they've already put it up for sale, the rumors have already started, everybody's already cashing out, and instead of the $180 million that you were expecting in your business, because that's what the valuation people said your business was worth at a 7.5 multiple, the investment bankers say, I can't get any buyers. I mean, there's some people that are coming in at 140 or 130, but for them to make the decision at that time, well, forget it. Just time out. Let's turn it around. Let's put some things in place that can make us more attractive. That's a hard time to decide when the preoccupation of all of your people has been somewhere else. They're focusing on whether they're going to leave, whether their jobs are going to remain. So that's what we look at. We look at that whole marketplace. What is that lost equity, and how do you measure that, and what changes can be made? So these are the stages of what we go through. We look at an initial evaluation. Where is this company currently right now? What is it facing? What states are they in? What's the cash situation? What's the line of credit situation? Where do they want to be? If they want to exit at any time in the next 5 years, you got to look at it now, because the industry could do this. Our goal is to maximize that optimum value. So maybe it's year 3. Great. Well, what changes do they need to make? We go to the source. We go to the industry. We go to the trends. So our investment banking partners start with us and the clients. The investment banking partners know the industry, and they say you need to diversify geographically. You need to work on your supply chain, and you probably need to get a transportation unit west to east coast. That's what we then do. We then start on those processes, and then the investment bankers take a break, and we end up doing the work. So once we get the assessment done, then we go and we find the specialists in that industry. We are not going to presume that we're going to know everything about every industry, and I'll show you the industries in a moment. Then there's a second measuring. There's a pre-improvement phase. Before we start improving anything or going down that road, we have to go verify what we've put together. So it's again looking at the states, looking at the projections, looking at a 5-year projection with any cash changes, then the improvement phase, and then you can go into a transaction with the improved entity and have the investment bankers now do their job to get it where they need to go. The state of the company. If you can do your own state of the company analysis, we do state of the company analysis, but I would definitely urge you to address these items, and especially that one. That is a specialized SWOT analysis. What are the strengths and the opportunities for your client's business from the acquirer's standpoint? From those that are going to be acquiring the business or merging, what do they think are important? What do they think are the key items that are going to get that business where it needs to be? Even if it's 5 or 6 years down the line, keeping up the annual meetings that you have with your clients, how's that going? And if they have management consultants that are specialized in that industry, that's your subject matter expert. What are they seeing? What are the trends that are happening? But the management consultants are primarily fee-based. So that's not their job. You have to force them to do it. You have to ask them the question. Sometimes issues happen. Business owners die, major crisis happens. Since we're always looking at it from the acquirer's standpoint, we will jump in a crisis, we will stabilize things. We have an entire placement system where we'll drop those executives in where they need to be dropped. There are plenty of executives that are not employed right now that are semi-retired or consultants, but they're very knowledgeable of what needs to happen and don't want a long-term engagement. So, what are the industries we're looking at? These are the industries. And we'll be happy to provide all this data for you later if you want, but we found that these industries are the ones that have the biggest pliability, the biggest stretch. There's either a consolidation that's happening, there's either a trend that's moving in a certain direction, and these industries are going to be moving a lot quicker in the next 5 years. So we have specialists in each of these industries. Investment banking specialists, management consultants. We do human resources. We do organizational development. KPMG did a study that came up with the top 6 keys. What is it going to take to get a perfect merger done? And they have 3 soft keys and 3 hard keys. The number 1 soft key, executive leadership. Who's running that show? Who has control over all of the people? Number 2, the culture. And it didn't say, see if there's a cultural issue. It said, resolve the cultural issues, especially when you have 2 companies that are coming together. So these industries we're very focused on. We have data that comes in often. Here's an example in a hospitality company. Offer came in, that was 100%. We put some internal company sales programs together, some distributor and channel partner loyalty programs, customer rewards programs, increased the ending value, the sale value of 34% just from those top line EBITDA numbers. So you automatically just gain another 15% of value because you had the time. The investment bankers aren't in any hurry because they get paid a lot of money to make sure that they maximize that value. The client will always walk out with more money than when they showed up, because we take a percentage of everything above the strike price of where that business is. We get 0 if we don't improve the value. So we actually choose the client because we can't miss the mark. But when we're choosing the client, we have all of this data. Doesn't mean that just because we don't take a deal that it's a bad deal. It might be because it's too well run of a company. There's not much room. So we will focus it straight to the investment bankers that should get the highest value right then and there. And that's only if the client wants to sell. If the client doesn't want to sell, we're off. We don't really talk to them at all. So 161% of the original offer in 14 months. The current value of the business to the optimum value. Not what it could, the most it could sell for today, but what's the optimum value of what we should get it to? What does it deserve to be at? So 0 all the way to 100%. It's already at its peak right now. It can't get any higher. We're not going to start working with a business till it gets to about 45%. Because we can, for the most part, do some good work to get that value up. We're going to stop working on it when it hits about 83%. We give it a score. So 6 and above is really all we're going to work with. But at about 83%, there's a 15% buffer. The business owner thinks that their business is worth 15% more than it actually is. So at 83% of its optimum value, they're at 98. They're not gonna want to do this. So this is our sweet spot right here, about 65%, because we can make changes. We can take the 150. In fact, this is a great example. We can take a $151 million business, and at the end of the day, sell it for $215. And they make an extra $50 million after everybody in the equation already got their pay upon the transaction. And if we have to bring in people that do the work right there in the business, that's just a standard, hey, we have to come in and make some changes. That's about 75% of what they would normally pay if they're going to go call a consultant to come in. And then we take care of the balance. So, because we're not taking a percentage of the company, we're not taking a percentage of the increased profits, we ask them to fund about 75% of whatever changes, which income tax strategies, they're usually, if you can dump it into a charitable trust early on and take advantage of the 30% AGI, you can usually help them with some of those costs. By the way, I was educated at Santa Clara University in the London School of Economics. I came out in retirement and estate tax planning. I worked for American Express, declined the World Trade Center position, so got intervention there for one reason or another, so I ended up in San Francisco. So I understand your business very well. I don't know your business now. I have not been practicing estate tax person for quite some time. I've been a real estate and a hospitality entrepreneur. My whole goal here is to make sure that if you have a client and they have a business, that they get out of that business at the optimum value. What I call a strategic partner is if you gather that data for your clients, I'll review it and show up and we'll talk about it. We'll just talk about where they want to go. Here's your business, here's where you want to go. I may give a quick call to a couple people and see if I can get a good idea of what might be a solution. No charge, no cost, but I can't have hundreds of strategic partners across the country. So we're trying to focus on the ones that are long-term planners, the ones that are not just money managers, the ones that beyond the business, what happens? Are there charitable foundations involved? I have my own Giving Legacy plan where I believe that someone's life really actually starts when they sell their business. Now they get to work. There's a great quote by Winston Churchill. He said, you make a living by what you earn, and you make a life by what you give. And I just can't see $30 million being stripped out of a business owner when that could go to an incredible benefit of where that family would want that money to go. That just makes no sense to me, because an investment banker says, hey, I only went fishing in these ponds and this is the highest number that I could get. So that's what we do. that's the focal point of where we're at.
So is your point in telling us all that our business owners should sell now?
Not necessarily. No, absolutely not. Because without businesses in America, we are cooked. What is going to happen are the inefficient businesses that are not adding the economic impact to the industry when the demand changes are going to either fall or they're going to shift. So in the industries that we're looking at, there's a lot of change that's going on. And that change is going to be met with innovation and adjustments. Those that don't innovate, let's look at the BlackBerry example. 3 years ago, it was fairly obvious, although BlackBerry had some patent issues and some other items that they were digging in, it was fairly obvious to us that they were just going to hit the wall. At some point, they were going to hit the wall, but they weren't going to admit that. They weren't going to run into that. But the market couldn't handle all of the big guys. There just wasn't enough marketplace. So BlackBerry's value just went. So that's, if you're in an industry that is shifting and changing, and you don't have capital, and you don't have the means to stay up with the innovation, and you don't make the changes that make your business, I call it acquisition attractive, well then you could be left behind. When the industry does this, that's the industry. So if it starts here and it ends here, I'd rather take the business and dump it into a bigger player, but take the sweet spot of what that business is. What are the opportunities? That's that SWOT analysis. Do they have patents? Do they have a transportation system? You know, a company that has a great direct sales, a manufacturing direct sales system, we could sell them to a company that just sells to distributors just for the direct sales. That's not what the business owner is going to be thinking. So in that initial evaluation, that answer will probably come out. You need to take a much stronger look at what's happening in your industry, because there are mergers going on and you're staying flat. Communications industry, the cable industry. How many of your kids sit around and say, "Hey Dad, I can't wait till 7 o'clock so we can all sit down and watch that show"? If they haven't already seen it and they're already, posting some review on it before it even airs, well, they're way behind the times. So the communications companies that are laying all of this fiber, and God forbid they've laid all this cable, well, they're cooked. The networks are already trying to figure out how to just, sell their shows online. It's already starting. So that's why we're very big in communications. Good industries and good businesses that shouldn't do anything. They shouldn't sell, and they never should merge. That KPMG study, it was looking at cross-border mergers, so there were some communication issues, but guess how many of those mergers, there was over 100 of them that they studied. Guess how many of them actually added value to the shareholders? 17%. So think about this. Investment bankers are sitting there putting all these great things together. AOL, Time Warner, Snapple, Quaker Oats. We had a great idea. And billions of dollars later, there's just this utter billion-dollar write-off that's just ridiculous. And they go, well, it just didn't work, I guess. Snapple was just this country brand. Come on, really? 17%?